Welcome to Frequently Asked Fridays with Karen. This is our first recording where we're on location in beautiful Portland as Karen's teaching tomorrow on Saturday at Alma Midwifery. She's very excited for her live workshop here. And we're just going to go through a couple frequently asked questions or very frequently asked questions that come up that Karen gets asked about resuscitation. And our first question is it necessary to do 5 breaths?
Good question. Comes up a lot. 5 breaths. So it takes about 5 to clear fetal lung fluid. My recommendation is always to do about 5. So it takes about 5 because the first few breaths are just beginning to clear the fluid, right? A little air goes in, pushes a little fluid out. A little more fluid goes in, pushes a little more fluid. Another breath, a little more fluid. It actually takes a couple of breaths to fully clear that fluid. So you can certainly do 1 or 2, but if your baby continues to have difficulty, my question always goes back to, well, did you do about 5? Because it takes about 5 to fully clear lung fluid. And that's what babies are doing when you don't need to help them. It's a transition. It isn't a 1 or 2 puff thing. It's a transition. It takes a couple of breaths to clear the fluid. So I recommend that you do 5 because it takes about 5. So do 5.
Okay. Our next question on here is, should meconium be a factor when considering resuscitation?
Okay, well, meconium is a factor, whether you're resuscitating or not. Usually it doesn't matter. Here's the deal. When it comes to resuscitation, it doesn't matter what's in there. Either the baby has already aspirated it or it hasn't. If you have a compromised baby that needs help with breathing, you need to breathe for the baby. If I was just trying to think about the question that comes up a lot on debriefs. It's like there's this fear that if there's some meconium in there, that when you go to breathe for the baby, you're actually pushing more into the lungs. Well, what's important, and as I said, I am going to do a full webinar on meconium, understanding meconium, the guidelines, understanding suctioning. But here's the deal. Meconium aspiration syndrome occurs in utero and not on the first breath. So if you have a compromised baby, even if there is a meconium in the lungs, you have to breathe for the baby. If the baby's in the hospital and they put it on a ventilator, they're breathing the baby. You have to breathe the baby if you have a compromised or not breathing well baby. So even though meconium may be in there, you still have to breathe for the baby. It shouldn't change your response to a non-breathing or a non-breathing well baby. So meconium is important to be aware of, and you want to watch how the baby responds. But most importantly, if you have a baby that's not breathing well, you have to breathe for the baby, regardless of the meconium. You could clear the airway if there's meconium in the mouth. Maybe there's meconium in the nose. I'm going to talk a little bit about postural drainage, how you could help the baby drain. But actual meconium aspiration syndrome occurs in utero and not on the first breath.
Very good. Thank you for that. I'm going to start this next question with my experience a little bit of I'm a birth doula, and so that's kind of where my birth history or my birth work starts. And I find that it's very, very important to tell other doulas that I believe that everyone involved in birth, everyone that's there, everyone's around birthing and pregnant women should know how to resuscitate a newborn. So I would love to know from you, for doulas specifically, why do you think, in your opinion, doulas should know how to resuscitate a newborn?
Good question. Comes up a lot. Probably just had an email today saying, I'm a doula. Is your class good for doulas? Is it only for midwives? So there's a couple of different levels to think of when it comes to whatever your role is. I think that the more that you know, the more you understand the process, the less fear there is. The more you are grounded into, this is what it takes for babies to begin breathing. If the baby's having difficulty, you need to help the baby. If you know what the process is, whether you're doing the skill or whether you're at the hospital or whether you're in a birth center or a home birth, knowing the process that the baby needs to go through in order to stabilize and breathe on its own, having an understanding of that process will help you be less fearful. That's one. As a doula, let's say you're in the hospital or you're at home or a birth center, knowing that not only helps you be calmer, but the other piece of that is that you can inform the parents. You can tell them what's going on. They can see that you're not fearful. They can see that you are really educated and you know the process that babies need to go through and that you know what's happening and you're able to inform them, whether you're in the hospital or not. Then the other thing, which I think you know because you've had that experience, is if you're going to be around pregnant women, there's probably a good chance at some point you're going to have a baby that needs help and there's not going to be anybody else there. So it helps you know that you know what to do if you have a baby that's born before the midwife occurs. Maybe you're in the hospital before somebody gets to the room. Mm-hmm. What needs to happen? Because you're going to want to do something. That's part of who we are. We're going to want to be helping a baby that is either not breathing or not breathing well. So there's multiple reasons why anybody that is going to be around pregnant women needs to know resuscitation of the newborn. What is the process? What helps support babies? What is the most likely reason that the baby doesn't breathe when you are helping them? To sort of know all that, it's going to make you better informed, it's going to make you less fearful, and it's going to give you the tools in case you need to be the person that acts. Mm-hmm. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that question comes up once a week. I get an email about your course or the webinars or people just asking about the roles at birth of like who ends up resuscitating and who needs to know those skills and that information.
So I was just going to say, maybe you should say a word about what happened to you, because I think you told me before you and I met, you actually were in that situation.
Right. And a little background for me is I've been a birth doula for about 4 years, and right before I met Karen, I had a resuscitation experience and hadn't taken her course, didn't know it existed. The midwife was on her way there, and the baby was born and needed breaths right away. Luckily, I was on the phone with the midwife, and she talked me through the process. I had another support person there with me who had watched a bunch of resuscitation videos and was able to talk me through the technical skills, but there was a lot of fear involved, and I felt the baby came around. It was a good outcome, and so I was really thankful for that. But as soon as I met Karen and started learning about her way and how fear and panic are a factor and what to know and all of those things really rang true with me so that I knew from that point on exactly what steps I needed to do in order to help a baby who's not breathing or breathing well. Because as a doula, I thought, I'll never end up in that situation. There's always a midwife there. But the doula is typically the first person at home. It's the first person that the client calls when they're starting to have labor signs, and sometimes labors go fast. So it is really important to know those things. Did you have more on?
So I was just going to say, even if you're planning on having a hospital birth, most doulas help the client stay home for a while.
Right.
Babies come. They just come. And really, most of the time, it's not a big emergency. There's just a few basic things you need to know. It's pretty simple to respond to. Most babies, especially when they come quickly, what needs to occur. And that's why having an understanding and getting a chance to practice a little is just going to make it, I mean, you're still going to have a lot of adrenaline, but it's like, oh, I know what to do. I know what the problem is. I know what to do. I know how to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to call for help. Pretty easy. So yeah, I'm driven to teach anybody and everybody that has anything to do with birth so that they can be more present and feel like they really have the skills and the knowing to respond to a baby, that it isn't just about the numbers, it's about what you're doing. So yeah, you're a prime example of that. So
yeah,
perfect meeting.
Exactly. And I have one more question for you that I just thought of. Why you started to go into this as far as you want to connect with anyone who is around birthing and pregnant women so that they feel prepared, so that they know how to respond. Why are you still on this journey? Like, you've been doing this a long time, and what draws you here? Like,
yeah. So a couple of things draw me here. Specifically, when I learned a little bit about the baby's experience of birth, that really catapulted my drive to teach, because when I really understood what was happening for a baby that either wasn't breathing or wasn't breathing well, I mean, for me, the journey was, is it better to wait? Is it better to do more stimulating? Is it better to do everything but ventilate? What is the least traumatic way to help a baby that is either not breathing or not breathing well? And like, the more I learned about the baby's experience, not only the baby's experience in utero, the baby's experience of actually the birth process and how memory works, implicit memory, the memory that's in our body, all of that became more important to me. But specifically, as a midwife, as a resuscitation and a newborn instructor, I became driven to be able to teach what is the simplest, easiest, least traumatic way to help a baby. So not only is that in the out-of-hospital setting, that's everywhere. And then in doing case reviews and debriefs with people, I mean, naturally, people call me to discuss their resuscitations. People would send me videos. I see videos on Facebook that it's promoted in other countries, and I can see that really they're missing the most important piece. They're missing the simplest, gentlest understanding of how to help a baby breathe. And so now, with you, we're trying to get this all online, which is, of course, a journey, but my drive is to reach more people, because it's not a big deal what has to occur for babies. It's a pretty simple process if you really understand what has to happen for the baby when they come out and need to become air breathers, whether it occurs at home, whether it occurs in the hospital, whether it occurs in the birth center, whether it occurs in developing countries. It doesn't really matter. It's a very simple process. And so I want to teach anybody that may come in contact with a newborn, come in contact with a baby at birth that may be having some difficulty, transition in the least traumatic way. So the drive actually just gets stronger.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that we're doing this.
Me too.
I'm so excited for this. Our
Yes.
first live one-on-one, we're together. Usually it's by
Over Skype.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I hope you join us and send in your questions. I'm happy to answer them and go through them. And I look forward to putting out more information about everything birth.
Perfect. And if you have questions for Karen, feel free to submit them on our website, on the contact form, on Facebook. You can email us directly at info@karenstrange.com, and we'll just keep answering these very frequently asked questions and get you the information that you're all craving. So thank you again, Karen, for sharing yourself and your information with us.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yes. And meet us next week for our next Frequently Asked Friday.
Bye.